Tea time, bar dusk, part 2. Trois, as one guy once put it on a game show. A little bit of progress has been made. I have cut the butter up, which is why there is this big knife here. It's a knife with no point, which does not make it pointless. In fact, the point on a knife has no point. You've got one little knife, that wide and this long, with a sharp point for going around the stalks of bell peppers. The really big knife that does most of the cutting, you don't use the point on it. Leave the point off, you can work in smaller spaces. Anyway, I have used some of each bag of flour. Because I have 1.5 grams of that, 1.5 kilograms of that and 1 kilogram of this, that is a 3:2 ratio. So of my 500 grams, I want 3 out of, open brackets, 3 plus 2, which is conveniently 5. Open bracket 3 plus 2, close bracket, which is conveniently 5, to be strong white, and 2 out of 5 to be rye. So I used 200 grams of strong white, 200 grams of rye. It's lovely flour, is rye flour. It's not like your brown wheat flour. It's very fine, lovely feel to it. I have just 50 millilitres of water in here. The rest of that is foam. I've added the sugar, I've added the yeast. I've also added thyme. It is the critical success ingredient in cooking that tier. Each tier has something: sprig of mugwort, sprig of allspice, sprig of mint, sprig of parsley, whatever. Once you have enough experience in a tier, you have a 5% chance of a critical success producing a better result. And generally speaking, you keep going until you get enough critical successes, and then you sell the ones that weren't critical success to the vendor and only use the crits. For this tier of cooking, it is thyme. So I got a packet of thyme, which I have put out of sight around here. Don't worry, I won't be showing you the disgusting kitchen sink today. 1 packet of thyme. It's just doesn't half smell. It's in a little plastic bag inside, which isn't resealable, and of course the cardboard box isn't dry, so isn't airtight. Absolutely stinks, and it's going to stink the place up every time it's open from now on, until it goes off from old age or gets used up. But I've put that in there so that the yeast can do some breaking down of it. All that on top, that's just where it's foamed up, because the yeast is producing carbon dioxide, it's producing the bubbles, it's making that fluffy, which is exactly what we want it to do. We want it to make the bread fluffy. Here I have the flour. I've kneaded the butter into it. I've also added some of my cream. I had 600 ml, I now have 500 ml. I'm going to try to get another, because there's only 50 ml of water. I need 200 ml of water from somewhere else, and it's coming in the form of this cream. And just like mixing mortar for brickwork, you don't want to throw it all in at once. You throw some in the middle, and then cover it with dust. See, this is still very dusty flour at this point. It's just crumbs all over the place. It's barely sticking. And you want to get that mixed in. And it's a weird sensation because I used the oven to warm the butter and soften it, make it easier to mix in, but the cream is still cold from the fridge, so I'm mixing cold cream into warm flour. Some of you may be thinking, wait a minute, he doesn't have flour on his hands. Some people may even have been thinking, hey, if you use 300 grams of flour for each batch of dough out of a 1.5 kilogram bag, there won't be any left to use for your hands, or indeed for the worktop. There is flour on the worktop because inevitably it gets spilled. But it is indeed traditional, normal, customary, to lubricate your hands with flour. You coat your hands with a thin layer of flour, and then when the dough sticks, it sticks to that flour and can be very easily dusted back off. I don't bother, and I do just fine without it. One thing I've found is you can actually lubricate your hands with olive oil instead of flour to get a much richer, oilier, fattier, more moist feeling and tastier bread, which is approximately how you make Italian focaccia instead of making really dry and dusty and boring generic English buns. Normally I would use 2 hands to mix this in, but obviously I'm holding the camera in one of them. So there we have, it's still just crumbs, but it is very slightly sticking together. I still have 80 ml of cream to add to this before I even start with the yeast water. Again, be back once I have something else to show you.